My name's Christine. Welcome to my podcast, Unmuzzled at 67. Here we are on episode 7 of series 2. One more episode to go, and that will be the end of series 2. So thank you for joining me today. You're very welcome. I thought I would just, as usual, do a wee kind of recap of what I was talking about last week. Last week I was talking about friendships, and I was talking about friendships that were treasured and friendships that were lost, and how I kind of dealt with my friendships back in the day, which was a bit fractious, I think, to say the best. And perhaps what I'm going to talk about just now would maybe even explain that further. And I also talked about finding your tribe. And people have been talking about that word tribe since before the millennium. I certainly have. I think it's an incredible word. And to find your tribe, for me, was one of the most fantastic things that I've ever managed to be able to do. And much as my tribes didn't last for very long, they were so enjoyable. So if you get a chance to pursue that, or it's something that might interest you, I really advise you to do it, because what you will get out of it will be much more than you think. So anyway, I want to begin this episode by talking about the title that I gave to season 2. I don't know if you remember, I decided to call this Living Without a Soul. And I want to explain why. So if you're sitting comfortably, I'll begin. So I wanted to talk about why I chose this title. And it was because living my life from 30s up until I was 60, most of the time, and certainly in my head, I felt completely alone. Yes, there were friends, you know about that, but my guard was always up. And I could never really be myself. I felt like a silo who interacted from time to time with friends or at work. But in my own head, I felt disconnected. That was... sorry, I'm going to have to start again. But in my own head, I felt disconnected in my private thoughts. That was expected, I suppose, because everything was played out on the surface. I played the game. Part of that was because I saw myself as a machine that facilitated others, not a human being. So much as that sounds crazy, I have to tell you that is the truth. I used to say, I just get my batteries charged every month when I get my salary. If I wasn't exhausted, working long hours, not always getting proper time off, which is standard in hospitality, I was cooking, cleaning, looking after my son, and latterly my dad. And I know that is a good example of how many women live. Being a mum, not really. More of a facilitator. I suppose I just shut down emotional connection. I just went about my life that to me was meaningless and without purpose. I had little connection with people, only a few, and some of this came about as a side effect from taking antidepressants. Now, I've been taking antidepressants for too long, actually, but I've only recently found out within the last 2 years that a pretty normal side effect of taking antidepressants is a condition called emotional blunting. And what that really means is that you don't connect so much with your emotions as you did before you took the antidepressants. So that seems to be a thing that I didn't know. And the rest of this kind of feeling like life wasn't really worth living came from constantly being overwhelmed by my job. For many, many years, it took up so much of my life that in the end, it became my identity. And I slowly watched me, the woman, disappear and a nameless, faceless machine take over. And I resented myself for letting things get that far. But then, on top of that, I became arrogant and traits of narcissism appeared and stayed. No empathy for anyone, no matter what the situation was. What had happened was I had had 3 high-profile jobs back to back, which I'd been headhunted for. And guess what? It went completely to my head. So a large ego also appeared and stayed. I had this, do you know who I am thing going on? And I also had this, how dare you speak to me like that? A pure horror. I felt I had no soul, no conscience, and I didn't care about anyone except me. I didn't see myself as human, and I didn't fit in, and I always felt like an outsider. But I suppose you could say that my ego was so huge that I wouldn't want to even be a part of the human race. I wouldn't want to be a part of anything because I felt that I was a separate category. If I had to sum it up to something we know, I would say I was living in the outside confidence 10 zone, and the inside confidence was gone because I didn't have a conscience anymore. I believed my own hype. Dangerous place to be, an unhappy and a lonely place to be. And I was like this until my actual 60th birthday, which I celebrated in the last hotel that I worked in. And from there, I changed jobs. I stopped working for hotels, but I was working in hotels, but I was working as an outside contractor. So in other words, I was working for a guy, a friend of mine I've known for more than 20 years, who called me, said, look, I really need you to work with me now, Christine. You know, he's got a huge amount of contracts in London where the company is based, and I've now got a contract in Scotland. It'll have to be you. I don't know anybody. How much do you want me to pay you? When can you start? So that was a kind of offer I couldn't refuse. Plus, as I'm sure you know by now, I was desperate to get out of hotels. So there were pluses and minuses for being a contractor in this new job. But then there's pluses and minuses in every job. I worked from home, and that took years to adjust to. I was just really lonely. I had lots of time in my hands. Nowadays, I find that a huge plus. But in the beginning, the adjustment was really quite difficult. I found myself completely alone from starting work at 9 till when I finished, and there was no one to talk to. And I could really feel my mental health starting to take a dive. And although I was almost stress-free by comparison to my other hotel jobs, no more 12, 14-hour shifts, this new situation was completely opposite from, I felt the days were quite long now. And especially in the beginning, there actually wasn't enough work for me to do. So, and there was no contact from the company that I worked for. So I really was pretty much alone. So I didn't want to go to the doctor with the increase my antidepressant story. I just thought I've got to find a way myself to get to grips with this depression, which was getting worse. And I actually felt it was crushing me. I couldn't escape that black cloud, and I could clearly see the black dog. And I just thought, I've got to take this in hand. So I joined a gym. I discovered and I practiced meditation. And I know you've probably heard me speak about that a lot. I read good books that were nourishing for me. I got outside every day for a walk in the park. So that took me about 3 to 4 years to make that adjustment. And now I love it. You see, the comparison was that I had a large team of people working with me. I had meetings to attend every day in my previous job, and I worked in a very fast-paced operation. And that stopped abruptly on a Friday. And on a Monday, I started this new job, which was entirely different and opposite from everything that I had known for the last 30 years. But what's interesting is that, and I'm kind of smiling now, I was not smiling at the time, but from day one, this job knocked the arrogance right out of me. Now, I was seen in the hotel as a contractor. Overnight, I lost my reputation and my profile. Nobody was interested in what I had done before. All people cared about was how well I could do this job. I was a new contractor who could easily be gotten rid of, could be thought of as a necessary evil. Another contractor might appear, offer a cheaper price, and I would be gone. If I lost that contract, I lost my job and I lost my source of income. The contract did turn out to be quite demanding. It was and it is in Edinburgh. It was and it is a night shift, and I live in Glasgow. So I had to, as part of my job, I had to visit the contract twice a week, and one of those was on a night shift. So it was a 100-mile round trip, and driving during the night was a new thing for me, and it took a lot of getting used to. And more than once, I woke up while I was driving, asleep at the wheel. My boss, who was quite, at the time, quite a kind of reactive kind of person, so I should have been able to spot him quickly. My boss would often say he was fed up with this contract, that it was more trouble than it was worth, and he thinks he should maybe just give it up. And each time he said that, it shook the very foundations of me. If the contract went, then so did I, and so did my income, and therefore I would be in a serious financial situation. So the thought of this was constantly at the back of my mind. I had no financial stability. Now, 8 years later, I'm still in this job. I thought I would take it for a couple of months, and here I am 8 years later. And that aspect of it, i.e. the lack of stability, it does remain, as it does with any contracted type job. So in some ways, I have had to learn to live with that. I have started to appreciate working from home. I have got time to do other things. I focus on what I can control, not about the things I can't. I need to take the hits when things go wrong and deal with them. But now my meditation practices are more established. I'm able to deal with this not from an emotional perspective, which is my norm, but in a more rational way. Focus on the positive, be grateful. I have a job at 68, I'm almost 68 now years old. The salary and the freedoms I have to pursue other projects like this. However, at work, I did have to establish some very clear boundaries with some of the people I was working with in the contract. And I mean the people who we always work for, if you like, the client of the contract. The old way of dealing with contractors was to talk down to them, dress them down if they thought that was needed, patronise them and threaten to take away their contract. And that was standard procedure for most contracts, especially in hotels. I made it clear that this is not the 80s, where people and workers in general were spoken to like a piece of shit on your foot. This was a new age. This was the millennium, where mutual understanding, respect, and collaboration must be at the core of all business relations. And that I cannot and will not allow anyone to talk down to me or even raise their voice. Absolutely not. No chance, nor would I to them. Establishing these boundaries has been a really powerful way to create a more professional environment for all of us, because bullies have no place in any environment and shouldn't be tolerated. So today, I have a full-time job, but I don't work excessive hours, and I accept my job for what it is, and I'm grateful for it. I need the income, and it's not easy getting a job at almost 68. So yes, I accept the night shifts, the long drives, but I revel in the flexibilities. I can work weekends, for example, if I need time off during the week. And now that I'm less reactive, I see the world differently. I spent most of my adult life focusing on my looks and my weight. So that might be hard to imagine that I was quite a good looking woman when I was younger. But the irony is I was at war with myself inside my head. But I ignored that and just focused on the externals. People told me I looked young for my age. So life for me was all about protecting that image. And I used to get asked why I never seemed to have a proper boyfriend or a partner. Well, for a start, if I was honest and rational, which I was more now, I didn't think it was fair to attach myself to someone and bring grief and chaos that I knew I would bring. So I think I did the men a favour by remaining single. Anyway, I wanted to try to be a better mum. That was taking up my time. And there's lots of good things going on in my life today. Like me enjoying Instagram. Who knew that could be a thing? And all the amazing support and connections that I've experienced from people who follow me. I had no idea. I didn't know anything, so I had absolutely no expectations, but I had no idea that this would happen. It's been a surprise and a delight and has raised my confidence, and it's raised my enjoyment of doing the podcast. So thank you all so much. So just before I end this episode, I wanted to tell you about my unexpected experience with meditation, which actually prompted me to write down my memories and to begin to it's the core of the podcast, if you like. So I've talked about the benefits of meditation, about slowing down your thinking, about being more relaxed, less worried, more rational. It gives me a great sleep. That's the other thing. But there was something else too. For reasons I don't really know, slowly all the memories came back to me of things that I'd forgotten about, memories that I've now shared in this podcast. Some were extremely upsetting. I have to say, there were weekends I just couldn't go out. I was crying. I couldn't stop crying. I just, those sobs from your heart, from your soul, just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, trying to come to terms with what I was actually being faced with. So there was lots of tears and snotters as I had to face up to some of the factors of the life that I just really wanted to forget. But no, the memories come flooding back. And I felt as though I was experiencing them for the first time, which in many ways is actually true, because a lot of my life experiences before I got a chance to really think about them or even properly experience them, they were buried instantly. And I remember that physical feeling. So I never really experienced them at all. So it's a bit like walking into a brick wall again and again and again. So that went on for months. That was hard and it was unexpected, and I didn't really know quite what to do with it, except I think that probably I just cried so much that I cried it out, and it actually made me face things, and it made me take responsibility. It actually forced me to take responsibility. So I wrote down all these notes as all these memories were coming back, and I put them into two sections, and the two sections are what I've now called Series 1 and Series 2. Meanwhile, I continue with my own podcast, and I'm looking ahead to Series 3, Recovery. And next week will be the last week of Series 2. And that's going to be a review. I'm going to kind of do a little review of what we've covered in Series 2. But I want to take a quick moment just to introduce a new podcast that I'm going to be doing with my friend Callum, focusing on mental health. We're going to be, I'll be giving you more updates as we discuss and finalise what we're going to do. So that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much as always for watching. Thank you as well if you've got time to give me feedback, because that means a lot too. I can't believe how much my confidence has grown during this time, and a lot of that has come from these incredible followers that I've got. So again, thank you for that. So thanks for listening or watching or both. It's been great to have your company. And I look forward to next week when we're on the last episode of Series 2, Episode 8. So look forward to seeing you then.